People wanted to see a ranking of all 32 teams over the entire history of the NFL, so here it is. And don't worry, there won't be a long explanation this time as everything was pretty simple. But I will need to explain how this works. The list is based on a combination of every team's win-loss percentage in the regular season as well as in the playoffs. Now I combined the two to make a comprehensive rank of the best performing teams in NFL history. I will be going over how teams ranked on each individual scale alongside the combined one, as well as adding another scale, one I like to call the BM scale. Now this is of my own creation, but this scale accounts for Super Bowl and championship wins and appearances over the entire 96-year existence of the NFL. Also, it's worth mentioning that the playoff records only cover the modern version of the playoffs, making the BM scale a little more useful. So basically, you can choose what's most important to you: regular season performance, playoff performance, a combination of the two, or that combination as well as getting to the big game. Last time when I looked at the last 10 years, I went best to worst. This time I'm going to change that up and go worst to best, and I'd say there are some huge surprises down at the bottom. 1 million points to anyone who can guess who the worst team in NFL history is. So the worst team, and I can't imagine many people getting this right because it really amazed me, is the Atlanta Falcons, 29th in both regular season and playoff records, with a percentage of .434 in the regular season and .368 in the playoffs. The positive here is that they are definitely getting better as they ranked 18th in the last 10 years. Next up is the only team to be under 400 in the regular season, and they are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Dead last in the regular season but 26th in the playoffs, thanks mostly to the Super Bowl win under Gruden and the Hall of Fame studded defense. Things look promising on the roster today, but they still rank 5th worst over the last 10 years. From the only team to be under 400 in the regular season, we move on to the only team to be under 300 in the playoffs, and that might give it away. The Bengals being the 3rd worst team is probably a bigger surprise than the Falcons considering recent years. They are 32nd in the playoffs and 24th in the regular season. They are no doubt better now, but they still need to break that playoff curse. Now the youngest team in the NFL, the Houston Texans. They are the only team that hasn't yet broken 100 wins, but that's of course down to their age and their .433 record. They've won 97 games, that's less wins than Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and Ben Roethlisberger, and exactly the same number of wins as Eli Manning. They've not done badly in the playoffs, sitting at 25th with around 400. At 28, rounding off the 5 worst teams are the Detroit Lions. Despite winning 4 championships, the Lions only ranked 26th in regular and 28th in the playoffs. Better representing their success prior to the Super Bowl era is the BM scale, which has them placed at 25th, so 3 places higher. Next up are the Cardinals, who have lost more games than any other team in the NFL. They were a founding member of the NFL in 1920 and have played 1,298 games. But their .427 record doesn't look great. They've done significantly better in the playoffs though, where they ranked 21st with a .438 record. In 26th place are the Saints, who are one of the top 10 teams of the last 10 years, but aren't sitting as pretty here. They're 28th in regular with a .442 record and 22nd in the playoffs. Now for the team a lot of you expected to see a long time ago. At 25 are the Cleveland Browns. The Browns have the 2nd worst playoff record at .355, but a pretty decent regular at over 500, placing them 16th. They also rank 16th overall on the BM scale thanks to 8 championships prior to 1966. 24th are the Jaguars, 19th in playoff but 27th in regular. If they were to go 16-0 for the next 2 years, they'd have a regular season record of 500. However, that obviously won't happen. The Jaguars, alongside the Texans, are the only team not to have ever been to the big game. Then we have the Titans at 23rd. They're also 23rd in the playoffs and 22nd in regular. And for good measure, 22nd on my scale too. They actually tied with the Chargers, but the Chargers had a better regular season percentage and have been in more title games. And at 22 we have the Chargers, who were the surprise 10th overall team in the last 10 years, but just avoid being one of the 10 worst teams in history. They have a decent regular record of over 500, ranking them 18th, but they've not done so well in the playoffs at 27 and under 400. The Chiefs rank in the top half of regular records, but 30th in the playoffs with a record of 9-16, and that's despite having been to 2 Super Bowls, winning 1. They occupy the exact same position on the BM scale regardless. The Jets are a lot of wins away from being 500 in the regular season, but only 1 more win or 1 less loss from being 500 in the playoffs. They of course have that one Namath-led Super Bowl to their name, but that's it for the title game appearances. 19th are the Vikings, who are very good in the regular season, but not very good in the playoffs. The Vikings are 8th all-time in the regular season with a 5-4-2 record, one they share with the Ravens and Giants, but rank 24th in the playoffs. They've been to 4 Super Bowls, unfortunately failing to win any of them. On the topic of 4 Super Bowls without a win, the next team are the Bills. Most famous for their early 90s run of 4 back-to-back Super Bowl appearances, they surprisingly don't rank higher on the BM scale, 16th in the playoffs and 23rd in the regular season. The last team in the bottom half are the Eagles. In the last 10 years, the Eagles actually finished 1 place ahead of their rivals, the Cowboys, at 11th. It's a different picture here though in the entire history, with them finishing 21st in the regular season and 18th in the playoffs. In the top half of the list, we begin with the Rams, who are actually the last team before there is a big jump in quality. The Rams have an average rank between playoffs and regular of around 20th, the next team is 14th. They are a 19th in regular season and the last team on that list to be under 500. A 9-7 season this year would see them get that. In 15th place are the Panthers, who don't have the best regular record, placing 20th with 4-9-6, but they have a very good playoff record at 5-6-3, which puts them 8th. They are tied with the Seahawks, but are behind them down to the Seahawks appearing in 3 Super Bowls and winning 1, whereas the Panthers have only been in 2, losing both. That and of course the Seahawks having a better regular season record. Next up are the Seahawks, who rank 6th over the last 10 years, but are down at 14th here. They have a good playoff record of 5-17, and their regular season is also over 500. At the unlucky number 13 are the Colts, who are just under 500 in the playoffs, ranking 14th, and quite a way over 500 in the regular, coming in at 11th. The Redskins aren't necessarily a surprise up here at 12th, but they placed 26th in the last 10 years. They're in the top 10 in playoff record, and on the BM scale actually finished 9th overall. The last team before we get into the top 10 teams in the history of the NFL are the Giants. They have a playoff record of exactly 500 and an even better regular record of 5-4-2. On the BM scale, they finish in 6th place. At number 10 are the Broncos, who are also 10th in both regular season and playoff records at 5-4-1 and 5-4-8 respectively. You've got to respect that kind of consistency. Next up at 9 are the Steelers, with a surprisingly low 13th place in regular season record, but an expected 5th in the playoffs, almost hitting 600 at 5-9-6. As for the Ravens, well, you'll have to wait and see. At 8th we have the Raiders, down at 12th in regular season record, but still above 500, and in 6th for the playoffs with a 5-8-1 record. The second to worst team over the last 10 years, only behind the Browns, is 8th all time. In 7th are the Miami Dolphins, another team that didn't fare so well in the last 10 years. The Dolphins are 13th in playoff record, but 4th in regular. In the playoffs, they sit at exactly 500. In 6th place are the Bears, the only other of the 2 founding members of the NFL still around today. Now, they rank 15th in the playoffs with a 4-8-6 record, but are first overall all-time in the regular season with a 570 record with 740 wins to 555 losses. And now we get into the top 5 teams in NFL history, and in 5th place are the 49ers. 6th in regular season with a 5-4-3 record, and 4th in the playoffs with a perfectly round 600. Then at 4 we have the Cowboys with a maybe somewhat low surprising 7th place in the playoffs with a 5-6-7 record, and they've lost the second most playoff games with 26. Only the Vikings at 28 have more. In the regular season they're second with a 5-6-8 record. At number 3 are the Ravens. In a relatively short time they've racked up some impressive records, such as 5-4-2 in the regular season, but most impressively they are first overall in the playoffs with a record of 6-5-2. At number 2, and drumroll which I'm not going to bother putting in please, It's the New England Patriots, and that of course means the Green Bay Packers are the best team in the history of the NFL, according to the stats that I used and how I used them. Anyway, first the Patriots. They're 5th in the regular season with 548 and 3rd in the playoffs with 604, tied with the Packers but behind in number of wins. And finally, the number 1 team, the Packers. It's obviously a little funny that the number 1 overall team didn't place first in either the regular season or playoff records, but they placed 3rd in the regular season and 2nd in the playoffs, which is remarkable consistency. 566 in the regular season and 604 in the playoffs. Of course, they are also first on the BM scale down to their 10 national title wins. So that's it for all the teams ranked best to worst all time. I thought it made sense to factor in both the regular season and playoffs, even if the playoff numbers only went back to the modern era, and I think we ended up with a pretty good looking list. If you wanted to see this done just in the Super Bowl era, well, that's a task for another time. Who knows if that will ever appear.